meaning. It wasn't a waste. Again, when we look at it, when we look at the death of Christ, he would die on the Sabbath, right? Or right before the Sabbath, there would be no time for them to take him down, properly wrap him in cloths, and anoint his body at the same time with all of the spices and oils that they would normally do. That's why later on we'll see the women going to the tomb with the spices to properly take care of his body, only to find out he wouldn't be there. Lugging around all those spices for nothing. So that's the whole idea here. She's anointed his body ahead of time. That's what she's done. Again, that's the proper thing to do with the burial of the body. And so, again, it would be one of those things. And so this act of love that she's given to the Lord will always be remembered by him. And what a thing to think about. The acts of love that you pour out on Jesus Christ will always be remembered. Always remembered. He doesn't forget them. Hebrews chapter 6, verse 10. For God is not unjust to forget your work and labor of love, with which you have shown toward his name, in that you have ministered to the saints and do minister. Other people might forget your work, but God never forgets your work. Not at all. Not the littlest to the biggest. Again, big events that we do here can't be done unless the little things are done by people who are willing to do them. See? And so, again, I would like to point out one more thing, though, that she did this at her own expense. She died to self. She didn't consider, if I give this is all I have left of value. She didn't stop to consider that. And so she was able to give all that she had because she knew that Jesus would give all of himself for her. So verses 14 through 16, the punk. Then one of the 12, called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and said, "What are you willing to give me if I deliver him to you?" And they counted out to him 30 pieces of silver. So again, this process, the things that were said, what happened at that time, all was the catalyst to send Judas over to betray his Lord. Again, the plan begins now. It's been put into action. There's no stopping it. The deal is made. Judas sells out Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. Judas's betrayal doesn't take Jesus or the Father by surprise, by the way. They knew what was going to happen all along. And again, in their heart was sorrow. Because Jesus would later say, man, woe to that person who will betray the Lord. Such a bad thing. It does, he says, it has to happen, but it would have been better if that guy wouldn't have been born at all. And would go on to call him the son of perdition or the son of destruction. Really is a curious thing to me, though, when I look at Judas and I consider Judas, how a person could be so close to Jesus, to be included with all the group that was there, the group of disciples that were following Jesus. And not just to be included in that group, but to be included in the 12. So close. Experiencing the miracles that Jesus did, seeing them with his own eyes, how he healed people, made people walk, made people see, made people hear, made people talk, how he fed the 5,000 and the 4,000. He was a part of all of that. He saw that. He saw the love of Christ toward the adulterous woman. He saw the love of Christ toward the woman at the well. He saw the love of Christ for those who lowered down their friend. He saw the love of Christ when he asked the man with the withered hand to stretch out his hand. He saw it. He was a part of that. And yet, he still turns against Jesus. It truly does show that the heart of a person is wicked and deceitful. It really does. Jeremiah 17:9 says, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? And so this will happen in the church, by the way. It oftentimes does. I think of the people who've been deceived by their own hearts and their own flesh. They believe the lie of the enemy, and then they walk away from the church, sometimes doing tremendous damage to it, is what they do. Again, they go out and they begin to teach lies. They begin to call themselves the church as they go out from the church, dividing the church. But their sins do find them out. Eventually they get exposed, shown for who they are. The bad part is that your average person doesn't know. Why? Because they haven't been reading their Bible, they haven't been praying, they haven't been in real fellowship. And so they can easily get taken by the Joyce Meyers of the world, by the Kenneth Copelands of the world, by the Benny Hinns of the world. They are easily fooled by those people who are just really nothing but motivational speakers, appealing to the flesh. That's what they do. Again, they're unwilling to grow to maturity, and they're quite willing to stay in their immaturity. And so they don't see who these people are until it's too late, until there's been great damage done, is what happens. John says this, 1 John 2:19, they went out from us, but they were not of us. For if they had been of us, they would have continued with us. But they went out, that they might be made manifest, that none of them were of us. So we know people come out of the church, they look like Christians, they talk like Christians, and then they're exposed to not be Christian at all. But they're just looking out for themselves. So I don't know what was going on in the heart of Judas. I don't know what caused him to turn or anything like that, but it does show me how we need to guard our hearts. Proverbs talks about these things. In Proverbs 4:23, he says, keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it spring the issues of life. Again, it's out of your heart that the issues of life come. Life's going to happen. Good things and bad things we're going to experience. And we have a choice. We can either let the good things go to our head and make us prideful, or we can let the bad things go to our head and we can become very distrustful. We can be disgusted and things like this, but we need to, instead of doing those things, put our perspective with Christ, put our trust in Him, and let Him lead and guide us and show us. I'm already telling you that these things will happen in the church so that you can be prepared for it. When God grows the church, when this place is filled up and you see somebody rising up and beginning to influence people, you need to be ready to resist that. To know, to be able to tell, to be able to see it, and to be able to confront it. And so we need to guard our hearts to keep them from turning away from the Lord. Notice Satan knew how to get to Judas. All he had to do was push the money button. All he had to do was hit that button of greed, the flesh. And so again, Judas at that moment started on a road that would lead to his destruction. Matthew 16:26 says, "For what profit is it to a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul? Or what will a man give in exchange for his soul?" Verse 16, "So from that time he sought opportunity to betray him." Again, it was from that time that he sought that opportunity. That was the beginning. And I need not say more on that. So by way of application, first, do you know that Jesus died for you? Shed his blood for you? And rose from the dead? All because he loves you? All because he loves you. And I can say this confidently, that if you were the only one on this planet, he would have still come down and died for you. Because he loves you. That's the love of Christ. Second, what radical and selfless thing are you doing for Jesus? Has Jesus given that to you? Have you been balking? Have you been holding back? Jesus wants you to do those radical things. Whatever it is that he's calling you to do, even if it doesn't make sense to other people, he wants you to, because you're doing it for him. Okay? You're doing it for him. Thirdly, guard your hearts. Don't let them deceive you like it did Judas. Amen?